Who?
All right. Hello. Welcome, YouTube, to
Never Had the Pleasure. That's pretty good.
This is a YouTube show
Hi, YouTubers!
where we watch a thing, and why just talk about a thing after you watch it?
Like everybody else.
Well,
Watch
when you
us
could also
talk
talk
about
about it
watching
before you watch it,
thing.
when you don't know what it actually is like.
What are we talking about today?
Just a highly relevant thriller from 2001 called Hannibal.
I think you'll find we pick highly relevant movies and TV shows to talk about.
Everyone is just going to be sitting at home. I don't know. I'm thinking about watching Hannibal, but I need some guidance. Is this worth my time?
I need a buddy.
Yeah. I have seen it before. It was like half a lifetime ago.
And I've never had the pleasure. Hashtag.
Don't worry about it. Are you on Twitter?
No.
I'm not on Twitter.
Technically.
Michael, who's your most famous Twitter follower?
Lady Gaga.
Get it. You're just one of her little monsters.
I guess so. I don't think I ever tweeted about her. Maybe she's out there watching us.
Lady Gaga, if you're watching this, if you could give us a share.
Oh my god. I'll tweet her about it.
You could DM her, right? Because she
Yeah.
follows you. That's a quick way to get unfollowed.
So if you're watching, you're probably following us from Lady Gaga's Twitter feed.
Welcome, little monster.
Welcome.
You're so fierce. You know who else is fierce? That shouldn't be our only option to lead into talking about. Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Lecter,
Medicine.
he hardly knew her.
What a joke. Maybe 6 months ago, we both watched Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs in order, and I had never seen any Hannibal film before.
Yeah, we'll continue with it tonight, and down the line, we'll probably do Hannibal Rising. So, in talking about Hannibal, we'll be talking about Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs. So, if you haven't seen those and would be devastated to have them spoiled,
Why are you watching this?
yeah,
Why are you
that's
watching
on you.
Our Hannibal.
This was directed by.
I was gonna say Brett Ratner. But not Brett Ratner.
And Ridley Scott is rolling in his grave. Okay, so you watched the two preceding movies. What did you like?
I liked both of the movies. I really liked Manhunter. Playing more on like the thriller aspects and horror aspects that mix with some of the procedural elements. And I think I found with Silence of the Lambs, especially with the Hannibal parts, like verging on cartoonish. I wasn't really as charmed with Anthony Hopkins as maybe I would have been if I had never seen a clip of Hannibal before.
Yeah, he's interesting in that role. There are moments when he does have a kind of like viscerally frightening presence.
Yeah.
But there are also moments where he's like so hammy
The butterfly toughened your nipples, didn't it?
that it just swallows the fear.
I like hammy things, which like we'll get into it, but I think I will probably enjoy this movie, Hannibal, because of that. But
Ridley Scott is a very serious auteur, though.
He's a hack. No, he's done good stuff. I mean, I do have like an alien book over there.
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs to me had like really good thriller stuff in it. Definitely with the Buffalo Bill story, the woman that he captures. But some of Hannibal's interactions with Clarice sometimes started the needle of being tense, but sometimes was just like a little cartoonish.
Agent Starling! Agent Starling!
When people talk about it like a very serious masterpiece and one of the best movies of the 90s, it does make me kind of go a little bit like, really? Because it's got the kind of flaws that it seems like other people usually care about. I think since I first saw it, I've kind of thought of Silence of the Lambs as like a really good episode of The X-Files, which like could come across as a bit of a backhanded compliment. But like a really good episode of The X-Files is really good, and I think it really hits that tone, and the setting is very similar.
It came out before The X-Files. It kind of set that tone.
Yeah, it did. I think of them more as contemporaries, but yeah, The X-Files came out at least a couple years later.
Like everything I've heard, especially Scully, like very much based on Clarice Starling.
Which makes sense.
Yeah,
Scully has a much more natural accent.
To me, Manhunter, at least watching it within a week's time, I would consider like more of a masterpiece than of
Yeah,
the
like,
genre than Silence of the Lambs,
to me,
personally.
for what I look for in movies, Manhunter is clearly closer to being like a work of cinematic art.
Yeah.
It has a stronger and more driven director's vision. Visually, it's far less grounded than Silence of the Lambs, but narratively, it's much more grounded, and the performances are definitely more grounded. Neither of us, we don't need to be like tripping over ourselves to be protecting the Silence of the Lambs feelings. We both really enjoyed it.
I think
the criticisms don't detract from my enjoyment of the movie.
And I think like if I hadn't watched them within like a week's time, but just like in comparison, I was like, Manhunter was like really great. If anyone hasn't seen Manhunter, check it out.
Unfortunately, we can't cover it on this show because we've both seen it.
Yeah.
So it would break the thin concept that the show is based on. Manhunter, Silence of the Lambs. I'm gonna put like Red Dragon like not that much lower. Hannibal's like over here. It's just like another thing.
Oh.
It is so the Mission Impossible 2 of this franchise.
So like maximalist.
Yeah, it's maximalist in a very like tasteful, like Grand Guignol way.
The temporal bone has been fractured.
And like, man, you'd think that the Brett Ratner one would be the Mission Impossible 2, but I remember it being like pretty like, for some reason the idiom I want to use is like straight across the boards, but that's not an idiom that I've ever heard before. What would you expect Ridley Scott to do with this IP?
I'm hoping the campy fun side of Hannibal will break loose.
Like under the wrapping of like an auteur's serious work.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the dream scenario here. One of the really tricky things about good camp, it's very difficult to make it on purpose.
Yeah.
I can think of a couple things where it works, but like Ridley Scott has always seemed like the kind of guy that takes himself very seriously.
Yeah.
And he's working with this material.
I could totally see him being on set and like Anthony Hopkins hearing Ridley being very sincere and just being like, I know what I'm doing here.
I know what sort of weird mouth noises I'm gonna make.
I'm gonna earn my paycheck.
Do you know anything plot-wise?
I'm seeing it Hannibal living it up in the tropics.
Okay.
I think he's kind of thriving.
No pun intended, but eat, love, pray. He eats, prays, pray. So Hannibal is eating, loving, and praying in the tropics.
People are catching on that someone's eating a bunch of people.
That'll happen. News gets around.
And I think he is going to find...
I gotta get out of here.
You know, I need to rely on my good friend Clarice.
How do you imagine?
I think he's going to like manipulate her
okay.
into getting information.
He just calls her up and he's like, hey, listen, I need a favor. Like,
girl,
like,
you know we've got this history.
Even though I'm very old and my teeth are very small, you can cut the tension with a knife. What we had, girl. I know that I like sort of set you up to be shot by that nasty man that was cutting up those girls, but I'm calling in my favor / I sort of tried to kill you.
It could happen. I just want to see more of him on an island.
Yeah, like
Beetlejuice
too. Did you know that was like the...
It was like Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian or something, right? Yeah.
Which like I
Sounds
want.
Fun. Yeah.
I don't want it anymore,
No,
but Winona Ryder under
I
a
don't know.
giant black beach umbrella?
Yeah, that sounds
Sign me up.
Sounds fun. Aren't they doing a Beetlejuice sequel? Or like, there's been talking about it.
Though it kind of seems like everything is just getting remade as a musical now. And I think the Beetlejuice musical has been pretty successful, so they'll probably just make Beetlejuice the musical the movie instead. Musicals are just movies with worse wigs. On stage, when they do like a close-up on somebody, you can always see the wig line.
Only in musicals. Not only in Nicole Kidman movies. So, Julianne Moore.
Yeah, I think like another thing that tells you that this movie is kind of a very gaudy, gothic colored Fabergé egg is that Jodie Foster read the script and said nah. It was good for Anthony Hopkins to say yes. It was good for Jodie Foster to say no.
And
it was chaotic neutral for Ridley Scott to say yes. Jodie's out, Julianne's in. They are roughly equivalently pale. As I recall, they do roughly equivalently good Southern accents.
Well, perhaps you'd care to lend us your view on this questionnaire, sir.
Oh, no.
I mean, it's not easy to do, but not overdo.
I would really like some wine.
Like playing a savant cannibal. I would do so great. She'd been a little more art housey before Hannibal, I think. And afterwards she was doing like Evolution with David Duchovny. And then she sort of swung back.
Psycho remake.
She makes some interesting horror choices.
I like Julianne Moore.
Sure.
Actress. Put in Billy on the Street clip with her.
Okay.
Crying to strangers on the street.
I'm sick! I have sickness all around me and you ask me my life? Shame on both of you! Academy Award.
No, she lost for that!
What would your ideal Hannibal crossover be? You get full access to the IP.
Hannibal and Herbie.
Herbie.
If we could get Hannibal with
Lindsay Lohan.
Lohan, that would be good.
I feel like Lindsay Lohan is where you go after Jodie Foster and Julianne Moore. At least she's
like
got
a Clarice prequel.
I could see that having happened. I wish that I could will it into existence in place of Hannibal Rising. Can you imagine if that's what she did after Mean Girls? Give me like a suspense set piece that you would hope to find in Ridley Scott's Hannibal.
So, Clarice knows roughly where Hannibal is. And kind of like a scene in Torn Curtain. Paul Newman is following someone to get information through this very beautiful museum. It's just like a tracking shot of him following the other guy that he's getting information from. But in Hannibal, it's Clarice keeping an eye out on this one person who she's identified that Hannibal's after because he has particularly yummy flesh. And Clarice is just holding back, keeping chill, walking through this museum.
Jack Crawford's in
Vatican.
on her earpiece being like, Clarice, you got her. The window's closing.
There's a shadowy doorway. Hannibal turns around and says, ha ha ha.
He makes a new and innovative creepy mouth noise and just sort of acting bombs the scene. And that's a perfect opportunity for Ridley Scott to put a bunch of old master art pieces.
Or statues.
Yeah. Man, I sure hope this scene is in the movie.
Good, eh?
I definitely remember a shorter cat and mouse scene, but yours sounds way better. So I hope I'm not remembering, for some reason, a longer and much better set piece that's closer to what you described.
In either the book's ending or the movie's ending, isn't she kind of in love with Hannibal and decides to run off? She just chooses to be a cannibal.
Yeah, in one or the other of them, they move together as lovers to Buenos Aires and ballroom dance in gowns and eat people. And that's the dream. I remember this movie coming out and people just not knowing what to make of it. And I think that expressed itself as pretty mediocre reviews, which I think tends to happen when people just can't process.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. I remember seeing the VHS at Blockbuster.
Got his face in partial shadow and he's got the red eye.
Yeah, gonna make it a Blockbuster night.
Yeah.
We'll be making lots of Blockbuster nights.
Shout out to Blockbuster. Sponsor us. Wish us luck. Wish us luck. Wish Ray Liotta luck. Because everyone's rooting. No, because he's in this movie.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
He's a guy.
So, through the magic of editing, we will see you in but a matter of moments. But in reality, some time will have passed. And you can take that opportunity to watch the movie along with us. If you've never had the pleasure.
Let's go do it.
The person I'm looking for is quite well known. He's killed 14 people that we know of.
You ever think he might come after you?
Oh, at least 30 seconds of every day.
I need
lights in action, Clarice. Are you back on the case? If so, goody goody. Are you by any chance trying to trace my whereabouts? You naughty girl.
Who is this?
Okie dokie.
So it's been a few days since our Hannibal viewing.
Yep. We've just been sitting, thinking about Hannibal.
If you can't tell from all the boxes in the background, we're filming at our parents' house.
In the basement. Did you have, like, a main takeaway, an overall impression?
There were some really good over-the-top moments, especially with Anthony Hopkins. But in general, I found the middle part with the Italian cop trying to catch Hannibal. I found that kind of dragged on a lot.
I felt the same way. Some high highs, but a bit of a drag. It came together whenever any of these things happen. Mason Verger's on screen, Hannibal's on screen, Clarice and Hannibal are in the same place. When any of those are true, the movie kind of lights up. But for a lot of the movie, that is not the case.
There wasn't all that much, like, suspense to it.
Yeah.
He's always the smartest guy in the room.
Exactly.
Which is how it is in Silence of the Lambs, but
It's more interesting when he's the smartest guy in the room, when he's machinating everything from behind this cell, right?
everybody talks about how effective Anthony Hopkins' performance is. People talk about, like, how Hannibal's only on screen for so many minutes. He's just kind of on the side, and so much more of the focus of Silence of the Lambs is shared with the Buffalo Bill story.
And I'd say Clarice is much more firmly the protagonist.
Yeah, and this one we've got the Italian cop who has, like, the same aims as Clarice. He's just trying to catch Hannibal.
He has the same aims, but very different motivations, which I think is key. This movie's playing kind of like protagonist shell game with this Italian cop, Clarice, who's sort of passive for the first, like, 2/3 even, and then Hannibal, the cannibal that you hate to love, which introduces a thematic disconnect. Hannibal's like hammering Clarice, and it's all about her hunger for approval, and with this cop it's all about greed for the reward and redemption. And Clarice's redemption arc is... Did it jank again? Clarice's redemption arc is kind of behind her. Whatever perceived redemption she felt she needed was in Silence of the Lambs, and in this one it's really more about where is her self-image rooted. The more primary characters you want to have, the more you need them working in sympathy. You need some kind of convergence, and this movie didn't have that.
And I think purely looking at suspense and tension, you know where everyone is at every point of the movie.
Yeah, and for most of the movie, they all also know where each other are. And that's a big problem too, right? In Silence of the Lambs, you know what Buffalo Bill's doing, but you don't know where he is in relationship to the other characters. But in this movie, Clarice definitely figures it out fairly early that Hannibal's in Italy. This Italian cop figures out who Hannibal is pretty early. Hannibal figures out that the Italian cop knows who he is right away because he's a fucking idiot. Who do you think you're dealing with, bub? This ain't no disco.
Whereas, like, in Silence
This
of the
ain't no country club.
Whereas in Silence of the Lambs, Clarice is trying to, like...
This is Italy.
She's trying to stay ahead of Hannibal on one hand, and then she's trying to track down, find out who Buffalo Bill.
Well, she's having to, like, pass this test that he's set her on that could be lethal for her with the slightest misstep.
It's like a surprise to us as an audience to, like, see just, like, what lengths he can go to and how clever he is. Whereas this one doesn't really have moments where he is all that clever, really.
He doesn't have to be.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, there wasn't any surprise and delight rooting on Hannibal.
I found a lot of delight in rooting him on. It just wasn't ever suspenseful.
I don't think
like,
it was as satisfying.
It's satisfying more like a light summer sorbet. And that kind of takes us back to, we thought we were joking in the pre-sesh about this being Hannibal's Eat, Pray, Love, like a travelogue vibe. And it wound up being much closer to that in tone, weirdly, than I might have thought, because Hannibal's just, like, never under any real threat.
That's the thing.
So it has the satisfaction of being this sort of light, frothy, and, like, we'll put some great footage behind us of like brutal murders
That's
in
the-
this torture basement.
Yeah, that's the thing, because when Hannibal finally catches... Oh, spoiler alert, if you have not watched Hannibal, get out
out
I told
now.
you. When Hannibal corners the Italian cop and has this, like...
Murder set piece.
I was just like, yeah, I knew it was
Yeah, it was just
gonna
kind
go
of
down.
like, ugh, finally, this
Yeah.
idiot cop got his. I really don't know. You read this guy's VICAP file. You not think he might clue in that you're trying to get his fingerprint when you keep asking him to touch things? These are probably problems that don't manifest so much in a 700-page book, because you can build up this detective and another character that's not in the movie at all, Mason Verger's lesbian bodybuilder sister, who's trying to inveigle his old pedophilic semen to have a baby with.
Oh.
That's what I maybe remember most about the book, and it really bums me out that she's just not in it. 700 pages. You can, ask J.K. Rowling.
That was kind of our general take on the movie, so how about we can go point by point?
And take it from the top.
Yeah.
It opens. Barney from the last movie is selling a prized piece of Lecter merch.
The
It's
mask.
The mask.
Correct.
That was a quiz. I like that little prologue introducing this new character.
Mason Verger. What a guy.
He stealth steals every scene that he's in for me. He's played by Gary Oldman, and I didn't really even notice that until the end, because I was just like, oh yeah, that's Mason Verger.
When I saw it in the credits, I was like, oh, that makes all the sense in the world.
Yes. He's got this sort of good old boy sense of humor as he plots his whole hog revenge. Yeah,
Fun
he's
revenge.
a nasty man and a piece of work, but so is Hannibal. Nasty is fair play.
Yeah.
He's obviously Thomas Harris thinking that, like all sequels, you have to level up. And how do you make somebody more depraved than Hannibal Lecter? Like, oh, you make him
Horribly...
horribly mangled,
yeah.
and a more base motivation for revenge.
It's quite the makeup job, eh? Looked pretty good.
Yeah. Anyways, we go from this prologue to Clarice is...
Go to the opening credits.
All right.
Very Born Identity style, and what an ending.
To the opening credits?
It's when all the birds converge in Hannibal's face.
I don't even remember that.
Really? It's my favorite part.
Yeah, then
Yes.
we're on
Our girl.
Our girl, Clarice. And she is taking a nap on the way to a meth bust. How big a potato must this meth dealer lady have been to warrant the attention of, like, 30 agents?
To, like, try to capture them in
Yeah.
the middle of this public market with all these people around.
Did she have a dirty bomb? I think
Yeah,
that scene...
bomb outfit.
Yeah, she did.
You'll be seeing it.
That goes sideways. She gets railroaded by the FBI and the Justice Department.
Yeah.
and-
That's where we meet Ray Liotta as
Yeah.
Krenler.
What a slime ball.
Ugh,
Corn pone this and so forth.
such.
I won't repeat some of what he says. You're not a gentleman.
Cancelled.
And then Clarice crying into her coffee in a scene that just feels very unimaginative. Literally just her at her kitchen table crying. An uneconomical use of screen time that makes you appreciate how tight Silence of the Lambs is.
That's true.
Yeah, like every scene in Silence of the Lambs is informing you about the character in an interesting way. And this is just kind of like, oh no, like this lady had a tough day at work. Anyways, Clarice is off to meet Mason. He just sort of monologues his backstory with Hannibal at her while she is actively like, buddy, I don't need to hear this. But maybe he's pulling the reins. Yeah. And then she spends the next 40 minutes of the movie in the basement listening to tapes. But she does make a field trip to visit her old friend Barney with his pigeon that he resurrects out of the kind gentleness of his spirit. Yeah, she goes to visit her old friend Barney in her Meryl Streep glasses.
Yeah.
She finds out that he's been hawking old Hannibal merch.
Gotta make a living.
Also kind of a bummer because Barney is like very gentle, understanding presence that has a very brief role in Silence of the Lambs. Kind of sad to see that sort of taken away for nothing. But it does get her out of the basement, so go get him. So from there, we're cross-cutting to Italy.
And Hannibal posing as like a professor, right?
Whenever Hannibal's on screen, your face just lights up because
Just walking around with his hats.
Yeah, oh, his Panama hat, his little pajama suit when the Italian cop visits him in his study. Yeah, it's almost like a C-3PO posture, ambling around barefoot. But there are also many scenes where Hannibal isn't there, and this Italian cop, the actor does a fine job, but there's just not a lot of meat on those bones.
Too many scenes.
Yeah. There is one other field trip that Clarice gets to go on, and it's a field trip to a Matrix sequel. She goes to this high-rise, you can see the city skyline behind her, flat, wide composition of these effete-learned figures behind this long conference table, and they're like smelling this letter that he sent her. They'd have to go to the Merovingian and smell the code. In that, they'd go like... And then green letters would come in and would go like, blah.
It would be quite a Photoshop job for him.
We also learn, while Hannibal is in Italy, that he chews gum. So he is American.
They choose gum in Manhunter, but like as a tool.
Right. Probably not a callback. Who knows?
There's, I thought, a pretty good scene. The cop has hired this pickpocket to try to get Hannibal's fingerprints, but Hannibal knows what's happening.
And tries but fails to castrate him. He's 0 to 100. From pajama suit to castrating a pickpocket. That was the scene that I remember when we were talking about in the pre-session. You composed this beautiful set piece.
I thought that was the one scene where there was some tension.
I wish that it had delivered on that sort of luridness, and I wanted a very like textured filmmaking, rich red fabrics in the Italian scenes, and like lots of chiaroscuro shadows. I sort of thought like, oh, okay, so it has this kind of ugly, very cool color tone here, and then when it goes to Italy, there'll be a visual contrast, but there was not. Meanwhile, Hannibal is nagging Clarice, like writing her these letters, being like, you're still not over your daddy.
He's got nothing better to do.
Yeah, we've all seen Keys to the VIP.
Each player must initiate a pickup by offering the woman a piece of gum for her bad breath.
Nagging Clarice from across an ocean, his love/daughter figure / victim.
Feels all kind of ways about her.
Real serial killers must look at him and just be like, he's like a spider with the fly in his elegant web, and he's in perfect control, always one step ahead. He doesn't seem to ever suffer any compulsions. He doesn't need to eat people, or at least he doesn't act like he does. He's like a Mary Sue for serial killers.
It's like how everyone thinks they're Carrie.
Anyways, eventually Hannibal's just decided he's had enough with this Italian cop. Patsy, there's the name.
We have a clip of Mason Verger with his boars, training them. They're chewing on a dummy. And I don't mean Ryan Lochte. Oh boy.
Do you think Hannibal Lecter would eat Ryan Lochte?
Yes. I think he would eat basically anyone if he could get away with it.
I don't know.
I feel
He's
like
such
maybe
a,
Lochte's like past his
Epicurean.
prime though for
I think
tasty
he's a little
flesh.
gamey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Lochte. You're out of Lochte. Verger is turning the screws on Clarice, and Hannibal comes to her rescue / to destroy her.
He'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah, I hope he does. We've all been there, buddy.
Fuck, kill, eat.
Clarice.
So Hannibal needs to get out of Italy, and he comes back to the States, setting up a plan that he's gonna wing.
Yeah, he sets up a trap, doing his thing off the cuff. He's just riffing.
He's enjoying himself. He goes to an antique store and has a nice little moment with the clock.
Clarice thinks she's following him to the train station, but actually who she's following is Verger's goons who are following Hannibal. Clarice is in front of a carousel. And Hannibal comes by and goes, wee. And he's like, ghost in the breeze.
Having fun, you know?
and he's gone. And then he's gone because he has been abducted
by the goons.
And he's back on his old dolly, being trucked around.
But not before Clarice gets her shoes.
Hannibal has left a pair of Gucci stilettos. Now begins the extended Gucci advertisement of the third act.
I guess maybe his compulsion is
a foot fetish.
Like foot fetish, and like he puts her in the dress later to
his
finally
fetish?
Dressing people.
His fetish is class.
I guess that makes sense.
A compulsion for class. Anyways, Clarice joins the Gucci gang and realizes that Hannibal's been abducted and she knows just where he's gone. And so she goes there too. We finally have Clarice, Hannibal, Verger, all in the same place. We have a stacked little sandwich, and it's got some pork on it.
They wheel Hannibal in on the dolly. Does he have the mask on?
No.
No. Does Verger have the mask on?
He had previously had it on with some implied erotic asphyxiation. I noticed. Yeah. This movie, bless its little heart, is trying to be as lurid as it can, but it just cannot match the book. We get these little hints, a slight bit of young Mason Verger's buttock in a black jock strap in the flashback, an allusion here and there as his depravities, but we don't get an extended written description of how his sister has to because she's on so many steroids. And we'll be cutting that out. Anyways, yeah, back to the boars.
I think they filmed it in like a former president's barn.
Hannibal's in the feeding pit. We get a classic Clarice, everybody freeze. And everyone freezes, and then they
do as they're told.
And then they move to Buenos Aires and dance.
So Clarice kind of saves Hannibal like right before the boars are released, right? Yeah.
Oh,
like,
I think
a
so. She
goon
comes in, she's like, everyone freeze, and everyone does freeze, but there's somebody behind her, and she gets ambushed. Dogs are coming in, she's on the floor. Hannibal has had a plan this whole time to free himself, so he didn't really need Clarice at all.
That's true.
Just like the rest of the movie. So he just, shimmies whatever, and
he carries her.
Yeah, he carries her through the feral hogs because
the
hogs have been trained to attack the fearful, and Hannibal knows no fear.
Oh my god, that didn't connect in my tired, sleepy brain. Clarice wakes up. Not sober.
She's not sober, but she has suffered an involuntary glow up.
Her ponytail was snatched before she was thrown like a tornado girl.
And the police car just twists around like a tornado girl.
I don't really know what his rules are, because they're always making a big deal about how he prefers to kill the rude, but it's not very gentlemanly to costume change your captured FBI lady. I don't know. It's questionable.
Hannibal's a bit problematic. Yeah. I think Hannibal might be canceled.
Clarice awakens.
She needs some wine.
Almost anyone would need some wine. What else is there to say? There's a legendarily bonkers, live and conscious lobotomy of Ray Liotta. What did you think?
I felt like the effect was pretty convincing.
Yeah.
Some CGI stuff. Wasn't just like, I don't know, some sort of cap.
Yeah. And like we've talked about through this whole thing, this whole scene just kind of like rides the line right between being tense and grisly and falling over into just a big old pile of memes.
Yeah.
Because we got Clarice asking for some wine. Krenler's going on corn this and that, but he's got his backwards fitted cap on, and we get the big reveal. He's acting like a lobotomized frat boy. It's a lot.
Yeah. It's not like a suspense scene, right? It's not like we ever really feel like Clarice is ever in danger here.
I think it actually delivered some interesting character beats. It's this really, really intense situation. Krenler, because he doesn't know he's being lobotomized, is still shit-talking her and being gross, and she's still trying to talk him through it, and she's trying to find every opportunity to wrest control of the situation from Hannibal, even though she's reeling around, recovering from morphine. And I think this was the part of the movie that Julianne Moore did the best job with. And it's the part where I think she was given the most to do he's a pretty static character, so he's not really going to change. He's this like fixed object that you as the audience and she as a person can like define herself against. And that's where a lot of the strength of Silence of the Lambs comes from, right? And when they're not in the same scene, they don't have any shared action, what's the point? And I guess the point is for this to be Love to Eat Prey, Hannibal's Italian travelogue. His name is in the title. It's not called Clarice Starling.
Yeah, definitely a different kind of movie with the focus on him. Finishing off the movie, Hannibal pins Clarice against a fridge.
Yeah, that snatched ponytail is snatched. So is he. She cuffs him. And there's like a little moment of tension, and she's got a tear coming out of her eye, and she thinks he's gonna just like yeah. And he's like
quite the end.
And then he goes in, and yeah, and like exactly, like you know that this movie isn't gonna end with Julianne Moore getting her mouth bitten off.
Left with a bit of a cliffhanger. He's got like a cleaver, and he's gonna cut off somebody's wrist.
Yep.
To free himself. We see Clarice running out of the house, and surprise, surprise, both of her wrists are intact.
Yeah.
And then
cutting off your hand for her. He must really love her.
Then we get quite the ending scene.
Just feeds this nice little boy a piece of Grendler's brain.
He's got his Lunchable.
The second notable product placement of the movie. I always find it interesting how these like highbrow, I can't make those air quotes bigger, movies sneak in product placement.
I always find it funny in movies when like kids are so curious about complete strangers.
It's a bit of a contrivance, but it's fun, very like on tone note to go out on. And that's that.
And everybody left the theater happy. Is there anything else that you like remember about the book?
The way I remember the end of the book basically talks her into being a cannibal and his wife. As with so many romantic comedies, she just sort of relents at the end. Dollars and donuts. I'd rather have the weirder option almost any time.
Fun, fun, fun. So that's Hannibal.
Yep, some high peaks. If there's like a supercut on YouTube of the 40 minutes of Hannibal, just sort of like
that's
traipsing
true.
around. Like you could watch this and have a good time if it wasn't 3 a.m. when you finish. This is prime, it's on TV viewing.
Hopkins really goes for it. He's a lot of fun.
He's clearly relishing being able to perform this role again. Nice to see.
And Julianne Moore, they don't really try to replicate the look and the performance. I could have easily seen them giving her like the same haircut as Clarice. Obviously she's doing the accent, but she's not doing like a Jodie Foster impression. How do we end these?
Well, I give it 2.5 pajama suits out of 4.
I'll give it 2 carousel caresses.
Out of 4?
Out of 5.
Ooh, yikes. Yeah.
I didn't like
you
it,
were a little
but I
underwhelmed.
thought there's definitely good stuff in it. So that's a wrap on Hannibal.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, you guys.
Tick the box on that pleasure.
Yeah.
Such as it was. Who knows
Must-see movies.
what further pleasures await. We do. We know what we're doing next, but we're not going to tell you.
Yeah. Come on back.
Goodbye.